Welcome, the week 5 preview of the Sharpest College Football Podcast, brought to you by LeanTossup Sports. This is BuckMetrics, joined as always by Robert Martin. Robert, week 5 is when my model is fully operational, and I always say this is when I like to see, does the airplane really fly this week? I'm excited. You fired up?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited too. Last week was really good for us. The thing was, earlier on in the season, there was a lot of stuff we thought was placed, but we're kind of like, I don't know, I don't want to touch that. But the model was a lot cleaner last week, which, again, as you get deeper into the season, that happens naturally, right? And now we're finally starting to get to the point where it starts hitting its stride, where it's like, this is up, down is down. Like, it starts hitting its stride where it's like, this is where this should be, this is where value is, et cetera, et cetera. So I really do like that about the model. I think this is the time when our models start shining, and I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, likewise. I would like to thank, we're getting more and more views and listens, which we appreciate. There are some people, God bless you, who just listen to part 2. And if you just want to see our stats and get our picks, great. I do want to pass along a buddy, goes by Biscuit on Twitter, reached out to me, and he said, hey, from the previews, he just took a lot of, not my actual picks, but just some of the data I passed along. He said, I've cashed a lot of bets just using some of the data. One example, he said he's played Wisconsin, played against Wisconsin a couple times because of the whole Phil Longo factor. And he said that's actually turned out well for him. So interesting. If you're looking just for picks and numbers, great. But if you want ideas and you're not listening to part 1, I know that we pick on stupid coaches, which is fun, but there are some ideas that we pass along to maybe just to, take a look and download and see if there's something that might catch your fancy or just something to think about, giving an idea on what you might want to play. All right, my metrics. Because I have the full-blown model, this is going to be a lot more involved than what you've seen before. So I've got my top 20 offenses here. Washington is no surprise. They're just number 1. They're just the best. We talked about Miami. They're for real. They're actually number 2, which is a little surprising considering that USC's 3rd, but USC's had Caleb sitting out for the equivalent of almost one game all of this season. Oregon, LSU, nothing really surprising until we get to number 7 here, Coastal Carolina. I think that's just an anomaly. I don't think that you have them this high. I don't expect them to be here probably by this time next week in the top 20. Notre Dame, Duke, Michigan, they seem to have taken a step back on defense. I'm not going to argue with that. Washington State, good to see. I was quickly back on the Cam Ward bandwagon after crapping on him last week. But, after week 1, I said, hey, this guy looks for real. Purdue, I didn't mention this to our guy, Isaiah. I got to ask him about that. I don't know if that strikes you as a little weird or not. I'll let you talk to that in a second.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go through the rest here.
Yeah.
These next few names here, Missouri actually is a function of, I don't know, the continuous murder that's going on in Boise State and that guy being let out of Missouri. A&M, Bobby Petrino, Louisville, proof of concept with Brom. Tennessee, no surprise, and Colorado, obviously, I think we've heard about them this season. So what strikes you as interesting on here besides Coastal Carolina being short-lived?
Yeah, so a couple interesting things. One, no Florida State. LSU,
Yeah.
yes, no Florida State. That is kind of fascinating. I'll have to see. I actually, to be fair, I've for full trust, I've not actually seen this list. So I don't think I've actually seen this list. So I will. I'm excited to get my first takes on this too. Coastal Carolina there is a little weird. So actually, back to Florida State, maybe they're on their defensive. We'll see. No spoilers. Coastal Carolina up there is interesting. That could be an anomalous reading. It might be some adjusted or something. I'm not sure. That is weird. I don't expect them to stay there either. Ohio State definitely that's a definite decrease from last year. They were probably 2 or 3 last year, right? So they've definitely taken a hit there as well.
Yeah.
Purdue is interesting. Offense isn't the problem for them. It's defense, specifically stopping running and people running. That's their problem. So I'm not that shocked to see them up there so high. Their offense is pretty good. North Carolina, like a legitimate team here. Texas, I think at 15, I think people would say that's too low, but actually that's correct. I don't think Texas is this like runaway amazing team. I think there's a lot of structural problems that no one has been able to take advantage of yet. Tennessee is an interesting one. My model is weirdly high on Tennessee, but I think a lot of people are lower on them right now. But the thing is, when you look at it, they actually did outperform Florida in yards per play. Now, again, blowout, whatever. But my model actually thinks Florida's good, so them beating a good team is not bad, if that makes sense. Like they basically, like, I know that kind of sounds weird, but it makes sense, right? It's like, okay, they lost, but they lost to a good team, so it's not bad. But I think people were like, Florida's horrible, but then like, because like they're like, Florida's bad, but then Tennessee lost to a bad team, so Tennessee's bad. It's like, well, no, actually Florida's a good team, so they lost to a good team, so that's not bad, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's interesting there. Louisville, again, Louisville, very frustrating. Did not decide not to cover against Indiana a couple weeks ago. That was very frustrating. Then they decided to murder Boston College for some reason. I'm not sure why they did that. Well, I mean, maybe for fun, for sport, I guess. I don't know. But they decided to murder Boston College. So, I mean, it's kind of maddening to see them weirdly not cover spread sometimes, just be like, whatever. But then against Boston College, like a horrible team, they're like, all right, maximum aggression, let's go. It's like, okay, do we really need to hang 50 points on Boston College? No, but we're going to do it anyway for practice or sport, I guess. Um, Ole Miss is interesting. That's a little high, I think, for them. I don't know what to make of last week's. What happened with Alabama? They lost to Alabama. They didn't cover the spread against Bama, but I think there was like a pick six or something weird happened in that game that Bama got like 7 points for free as well, or close to it, I think. But Ole Miss isn't bad. I just don't know how good they are. Like I feel like them Alabama beating Ole Miss isn't necessarily saying that Bama's good. It's just saying Ole Miss isn't that good. Like there's still a ton of question marks just around Alabama in general, and I don't. Just because they beat Ole Miss isn't like, all right, guys, it's fixed. Like no, it's not fixed. Um, so we'll see. That one's going to be interesting. Bama's got in this week is interesting. Next week is even more interesting. Texas A&M. So we'll have to see that. But yeah,
Yeah. And I think Ole Miss is getting a lot of credit for the good performance against Tulane, and we'll get to defenses in a second. And similarly, I think Coastal's getting one boost from a decent performance against the best defense, which is UCLA, and not surprising. They basically have not given up anything to anybody so far. Um, I've got in green here the defenses that are rated 9 and above. That's where I start to consider playing an under. If there's a good enough margin too, that's what I found. So, if you're just kind of looking for ideas at home, pay a little more attention to these teams that have a rating of 9 or above. UCLA, Penn State, Georgia, nothing surprising. Ohio State. I think this is year 2 of Jim Knowles. They just look a lot better this season. Texas, I think I probably believe in their defense a little more than you. Um, Oregon, I'm just going to say I don't know. I don't know if they'll be number 6 at the end of the season. I think they're improved, but we'll see. Tulane, like I talked about with Ole Miss, I think they're bumping up Ole Miss for that. Oklahoma, the Brett Venables thing is working year 2, at least on defense. Duke, Alabama. Duke is actually another team I was upset about before the season, getting a pat on the head. Believer in them. Tennessee, 11th. Didn't see that coming. People just crushed them after the Florida game, but clearly they've done well aside from that. Liberty is a menace. Jacksonville State is. We'll see about that. I don't know. I think that there's a lot of Sam Houston baked into that number.
no, they haven't played them
Nebraska.
yet.
They shut out. Oh, they shut out Eastern. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, they play them. They
Yeah.
play them this week.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is when Sam Houston gets negative points.
Yeah. They're going from They go from facing one juggernaut to another. Nebraska. I think I believe this. They held Colorado in check for a while. Actually, I think they. Really until just the dam burst there right in the second half. Miami top 20 both sides of the ball, as is Notre Dame. Rutgers is top 20, not surprising based on last week. Syracuse top 20, Rocky Long, like I talked about in part 1. And then there's Iowa, and then the Iowa of the Bay Area, known as California Berkeley. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so right off the top, no Michigan.
Yep.
That is again, their offense is worse than last year, and their defense is not showing up this year. Now they've lost a lot of pieces on defense, so it's not that surprising. But again, people saying Michigan's going to win the Big Ten, I don't know about that. That's one thing that's right there. Second, Iowa 19. People think, oh, that's okay. No, that's catastrophic for them. That is basically the season is over because when you are one of the worst offenses in all of college football, you need to have one of the best off defenses in college football. But your defense, like they were what 1 or 2 last year, right? Somewhere around there, depending on the week, right?
They were top 5, yeah.
Yeah, top 5 depending on the week. The fact that they're 19 now and not a particularly close 19th, it's not really, there's no particularly close 19, but that they're not a particularly close 19th is a big problem because now all of a sudden you can't stop them on defense as Penn State put up 31 against you,
Yeah.
and you now can't score at all either, so you're in deep trouble, and
Yep.
that's very concerning. Ohio State's defense is interesting. Texas's defense is interesting as well. I kind of feel like it's just they haven't played anybody. Like, who's the best team they've played, right? Rice,
Rice is probably the
Wyoming's
best
offense.
offense. Yeah.
Yeah, no, so in terms of offenses, right? Like, okay, Rice's offense is that particularly good. Wyoming's offense is that particularly good. Baylor, we think, is horrible as well, right? So we're not like it's not like, oh man, these are like amazing offenses that Texas is playing and shutting down this week. Kansas, let's see. Tulane is interesting up there as well. Duke, again, just a very consistently good team, right? This is a top 10 offense, top 10 defense, right? I like this team, and I really like them this week against Notre Dame. I think that's a really good position for them. And Liberty, it's interesting you're picking up on Liberty here as well. They're also a surprise. Well, not a surprise to us, but to many other people. They should be a top 25 team. They are currently not. I don't think they're not currently a top 25 team. They should be. The AP and coaches are giving them no respect. Apparently, they don't actually look at scores at the end of the week. I do. But they should be up there as well. And Rutgers, again, this is the sad thing about rankings, right? People will be like, oh, well, Rutgers got blown out by Michigan, therefore they're not a top 25 team. It's like, well, that's not actually how that works. I mean, okay, they might not be, but if you were thinking of ranking Rutgers and now you're like, well, they got blown out by Michigan, so they're not, that shouldn't change your opinion of it. They lost to a potentially good team, right? So therefore they should be, like, it shouldn't hurt them that much in terms of the rankings, right? And that's the thing. But yeah, but Miami up there, Nebraska as well, those are actually both pretty good defenses. We basically stopped talking about Nebraska. They crushed Northern Illinois, and then I think they didn't get the job done fully against, what was it, Middle Tennessee? Or who did they play last week? I can't remember. They played someone.
Yeah,
And they won by 14. I think the spread was like 21 and a half. So they didn't get the job fully done, but they were pretty solid on defense against them. But yeah, no, this is very interesting, and I think it's showing that this is not last year. And I think there are a lot of people that are still really, really high on Georgia. And now that being said, full disclosure, I already have Georgia against the spread this week. That being said, though, emphasis on this week, not forever. I am on Georgia this week because I think Auburn is bad. But at the same time, I think people are just penciling in Georgia as though they're the number one team. They are not the number one team. They're not number one defensively, and they're not number one offensively either. I think Georgia is going to get a run for their money this year. I don't think this is a lock that they're going to be that they're going to win this year. Just as like I think they're the favorites to repeat, and I think the three-peat is definitely in jeopardy, even just from the SEC East, let alone the SEC championship game and the college football playoff. Like their offense is not, their defense has regressed a little bit. Still a really good defense, but it's regressed. It's clearly regressed. It's not the best defense overall anymore, and their offense is just is not nearly as strong as it was last year. I mean, we say what you will about Stetson Bennett to Brock Bowers. It just there's not that production is just gone. It's not as strong as it was last year. Carson Beck is whatever, but like you still need to score points, and they're just not doing that right now.
Yeah. Yeah. One other thing that's interesting, there is many Conference USA teams too in the top 20 or even top 13 as there are Big 12 teams in Texas and Oklahoma. Interesting. And we'll see kind of how that plays out in a couple slides later. So here's the total composite top 20, offense, defense, adjust for venue of games. And this is my least favorite slide because your favorite team, Oregon, is number one. We can just move on. No, so, Ohio State, really on the strength of their defense, like we talked about, which is interesting. UCLA not being penalized for that Utah game, especially since their defense was so solid there. I agree with you. Ole Miss probably doesn't belong to be this high, but we'll see. You probably think Texas should be a little lower. I think we probably both agree Washington probably should be a little higher than seventh. Duke, I don't know how many other people would have them eighth. Tennessee ninth is a little. It surprised me when I ran this, but I think that when we get to the actual picks, I think that your model kind of likes them as well overall. Oklahoma 11th, like I said, the Venables year two thing is working out well. Liberty is a menace at 13. Coastal, enjoy it while it's there. Purdue is riding that strong offense to a top 20 ranking. Washington State 19th. That's a lot of Cam Ward and Ben Arbuckle. There's Michigan sneaking at number 20. And you know who you do not see in here? Is
Georgia.
Georgia or USC.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. My top. Well, I think I put top 30 this week. It's very different, but interestingly similar in some ways. Specifically Tennessee. It's fascinating you have Tennessee this high because when I was running mine, I'm like Tennessee should not be this high, and now both of our models are saying Tennessee is better
Yeah.
than we think. So, and one high better than we think, and two better than Georgia, which is very interesting. And the thing is, as I've learned, when my model says something, and then your model also says the same thing,
Yeah.
bet that thing. So
Yep.
that's what I'm gonna do. I think you can actually bet Tennessee to win the SEC East. I think it's not a horrible bet. I think that's coming. I think Georgia Tennessee's coming up in a couple weeks. I don't think Georgia has this. I think Georgia's gonna take a couple losses here. I don't think it's not gonna be this week, but I think there's some coming up.
Yeah. A couple kind of other points about this, and I'll start with these metrics I will use obviously to come up with my lines. These are power ratings. So this is on the whole, Oregon is 22 points better than an average FBS team. And I use these to evaluate a team's performance, obviously, and it's a predictive power rating, not just a descriptive. And I bring this up because if there's one gap that I see when I do these lookbacks, it's the teams with the best quarterback play will have good luck in that their win-loss record will consistently outperform what the ratings said they should, if that makes sense. I bring that up for three instances. We'll kind of just in whatever order here. Let's start with the ranked team. I think that means that Washington State is actually probably better than 19th because Cam Ward is having an amazing season, and similarly Washington, although Washington's got a lot of garbage time. I bring it up because that's why USC is so low. Their defense is not loved by my model, but Caleb just outperforms, and I think that your model kind of
Captures that.
captures that point. And the other thing I would bring is the other side of that is I he might turn out to be great. I don't know how great he'll be this season, but I don't think that Carson Beck is really a quarterback that will lead a team to dramatically outplay their metrics. Kind of to your point about, when Georgia plays Tennessee, I don't know how much Georgia magic you want to bake in there. I just don't see him to be one to have them to outplay their metrics, especially when you've got a team here that's legitimately top 9 in Tennessee. Just little plot line to keep your eye on in terms of Georgia.
Well, that's the thing, right? I mean, Georgia was always this good team, but always chronically underperformed before they got with JT Danielson before they get Stetson Bennett. Suddenly, that's the impetus to win 2 national championships straight. Fast forward to this year, what's gone? Well, Stetson Bennett is a Los Angeles Ram.
Mm-hmm.
James Cook, Buffalo Bill. He's their starting running back. Their entire defense is playing for Philadelphia. Um, Again, just amazing how that happens. But a lot of pieces from those Georgia teams are gone now. And okay, you got Brock Bowers, that's great, and you've got a couple of good defensive players, great, very happy for you. But Trayvon Walker's gone, Trayvon Walker, Nakobe Dean, Jalen Carter, Kellen Ringo or something. Like there's so many defensive pieces are gone from that team now. I think a couple of wide receivers too. George Pickens, he's gone. He's a Steeler now too. So there are so many pieces from that team that are gone. And the thing is, watching them, I mean, to be fair, okay, they're not winning as dominant as they did before, but they're still crushing teams right now. They're winning by 20, 30 points. They're not even coming close to covering the spread, but they're still winning by 20, 30 points. And it's so easy. Again, remember when I've mentioned my gripe with the commentators talking about Michigan. It's like, oh, Michigan got the job done scoring 30 points against Eastern Carolina when the spread was 35, right? Easy to say, Georgia got the job done, right? They got the job done, beat up a lesser team by 20 points. That's not what's happening, guys. They're not as dominant as they were last year. They're not covering the big spreads. I mean, sometimes they're not even getting as many points as the spread even was, right? They haven't played any good teams yet. Auburn is a test, not a big test. Their schedule starts ramping up soon. You're going to have Tennessee and Florida. I think both Tennessee and Florida are risks. I think neither of those are gimme games. I think they could fail against either of them, potentially both. Like, Georgia might be in a little bit of trouble here. So take that as you will. But I am not like I think a lot of people are just penciling in an undefeated Georgia in that SEC championship game. No, that's not what's going to happen here.
Okay, let me write this down. So Robert says they're going 7-5 again for the second year.
Yes, 7-5. There we go. Yes, I'm going to be on a bulletin board in Athens.
Although one name you didn't mention, which I think might be manifesting in the quarterback play, but not the quarterback, Stetson Bennett, is actually Todd Monken is no longer there. And I think Mike Bobo, go ahead and find me the first great quarterback that he's developed. Let's just say that.
Yes.
All right. So this is where I compile the power ratings by conference. And never seen this before. Pac-12 on top, of course, because college football, everybody. No surprise that it's really on the offensive side of the ball that they're really the best. Big Ten, obviously, no surprise, best defenses. Even their crappy teams really play defenses for the most part. ACC and Big 12, no surprise there. What actually stands out to me is my beloved Conference USA is 7th. They are ahead of 3 other Group of 5 conferences. Really, really good debut for the weekday conference. I don't know if we're going to call it that Q-section, whatever we said we're going to call that. Starting next week, we're going to get, I think, a Thursday or Friday night game. I think we get a Friday night game this week, right?
Wednesday, I think that's there's also Wednesday games next week. There's a Wednesday game next week,
okay.
And the week after we go to Tuesday. So the thing is, there's only next week. Tomorrow is the GOP debate, so that's something I watch because I'm a sicko in other ways too. But there's the GOP debate, and then there's football, and then next Tuesday there's nothing, but then next Wednesday there's things. So basically, only next Tuesday there's nothing on next Tuesday in terms of football and our politics. So. Yeah.
On my third screen, I might have to have a YouTube TV of whatever game that is.
Yes, but no.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Yeah, 2 things there. One, for the Big Ten, I feel like if we got rid of half of the underperforming offensive teams in the Big Ten, they'd be number 1. If we just eliminated Iowa and Nebraska, it'd be like, oh man, the Big Ten's the best conference. Wow, crazy. Also, can we do Pac-2, which is just Oregon State and Washington State? Could we put them in there? That'd be hilarious. We should do that. I mean, it's sad, but I mean, I think there's hope they're going to get to the Big 12 next year. So that'd be kind of, but they'd probably be up there. I think in terms of they'd probably be
I can look up where they would be really quick. I can pull that up. One thing I do want to point out too is the Sun Belt. I kind of was concerned about. I was a huge Sun Belt proponent last season. I said it seems like they might take a step back this season, and they have. I had them basically in the 6th spot for most of last season, and they've taken a step back.
Mm-hmm.
One last thing: the American, I kind of called it a Conference USA plus. It just seemed like that, and now it's a Conference USA minus, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see, Oregon State. So Washington State and Oregon State as a conference, they averaged to 8.2. So yeah, they would be number 1.
They'd be the best conference. Wow. Shout out to the Pac too. They're getting there. But yeah, I also think the entire Mountain West is just being basically carried by Fresno State just obliterating other teams. It's not even close. They're just usually other teams, they're yeah, okay, we'll just stop. We've only scored 50 points this game. We got to do more. Come on, guys. What are we doing here? You're beating up on a MAC team. Come on, let them live. It's not fair.
Let them live.
Nope. It's just They're just and Nevada. How much is Nevada dragging down the mountain? Well, no,
Oh my
Nevada
God.
ran did not horrible against Kansas, but no, it's just like like Fresno's just a destroying. There's a revenge path. I don't even know why. Like no one slighted them. They were good last year. I don't know why people are like they have like Colorado like revenge tour there, but no, it's and I think the Conference USA is actually pretty good. I think they're legit, and we're going to start seeing that some of their games starting on Thursday night. So, yeah, I'm excited to see some Conference USA stuff.
To answer your question, that is the worst in the Mountain West by my rankings. And thanks for rubbing salt in that wound. I had Kansas giving 28. They actually played horribly in that game. That final score was an anomaly. I think the post game margin was closer to the spread of 28 rather than 7. I don't know how that happened, but I don't know. We
That
move
was
on.
some fluky stuff happened in that game. Yeah, I had that one too, but
Yeah. All right. My top 10 quarterbacks based on Apex rankings. Jack Plummer, the big news here, moves up to number 4 from off the board. Familiar names: Hartman, Gabriel Van Dyke. Jaden Daniels jumped back on after he was out of the top 10. Caden Salter. Did I mention that Liberty is a menace? This team is not to be messed with. And then Darren Granger stays in the top 10 with a big road win at Coastal. And I'm just going to quote myself here. I actually looked this up, went into YouTube. My exact words were in the Sunbelt Preview podcast. If Grayson McCall is not the same under Tim Beck, parentheses, check, Darren Granger could be the best quarterback in the Sunbelt, parentheses, also check. So good call by me. Let's see if he can stay top 10. Other thing is you got 2 actually G5 quarterbacks in here with him and Salter.
yeah, Liberty is like terrifying, and Tyler Van Dyke's finally living up to the hype from him from last season. Um, Jaden Daniels again up there. Interesting. Again, no Jordan Travis from FSU, but again, they've actually played some pretty good teams, right? So it's maybe not the craziest that they're not up there yet. Let's wait until they start playing the Virginias and the Virginia Techs of the
Yeah.
ACC, and then when he throws for like 300 yards, 350 yards against Virginia Tech or something, let's see what happens then. Sam Hartman is interesting. I think with some of these lists, there is a lot of application to NFL. Like, I think some of the ones we saw last year were some that went to the NFL and were solid backups for the NFL as well. Jack Plummer's interesting there. Sam Hartman's an interesting one though because he's so old. I don't know if he might be an NFL backup, but he's not going to be a starter, right? But a lot of this isn't an NFL podcast, obviously, but like there is going to be a glut. Like half these quarterbacks could potentially be NFL starters, and there is. I mean, obviously, there's always a demand for quarterbacks, but like there's enough quarterbacks that like some of these guys are going to fall, and there's going to be a team that gets incredible value on one of these guys. Like there's probably in any given year, there's probably 8 or so teams that could use a quarterback, and some got some last year, but some others didn't that probably could have. But like there are still just way more quarterbacks than there's going to be way more quarterbacks than jobs to fill. So for this next year, so some guy that we think is really really good who probably doesn't play for an SEC or a Pac-12 team is going to fall, and I think that's. And then again, some of them might just say, "Okay, I'm going to stick around, go another year for an NIL deal, right?" And wait for like someone else to retire or something, right? So, but we'll see. But yeah, there's the quarterback class this year is amazing, and you're seeing that here as well. So
Yeah. All right. Top Ryan. These are the top receivers based on cumulative production above average or newbie. Interesting. First of all, Washington has 2 in the top 4, which is crazy, but not surprising based on what they're doing. Malik Washington, of course, he'll fall out since that genius Tony Elliott is going to start Mr. Musket over Colandrea in Virginia. Great job there. The Massachusetts Magic still is happening. I don't know what's going on, even without the Moon God. And finally, a couple names here we've seen before. Neighbors has been in the discussion all season. Lydiatric Griffin, new name to me. Kind of surprising given Mississippi State's offense was really something to behold, not in a great way against LSU. And then Luther Burden, number 10, it's just a matter of time. He's been talked about for a while, and finally, he and Brady Cook just kind of pushing each other's numbers up quite a bit.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Malik Neighbors is very interesting there for LSU. LSU has looked real ever since losing to Florida State. They've looked really, really good, which is kind of what we said. That was one of the things we said like right off the bat. We're like, okay, yeah, they lost and it looked bad to Florida State, but if Florida State's really good, that means that LSU lost to a really good team. That's not a bad thing. And again, I bought in at LSU. I've got them at 40-1 to win. I have them before as well, but I have them at 40-1 in college football playoff. They could definitely get out of the SEC. And they could definitely beat Alabama in a couple of weeks. That's for sure. Um, but yeah, like Washington is terrifying though, and like I don't know. Like now again, their opponents haven't been amazing. Cal does have a good defense, but they absolutely shredded that. I don't like honestly like watching them play. It's like they're playing Madden. I swear, like it's like a video game watching them just watching Penix throw like 40-yard bombs to like double covered receivers who have like 5 yards distance. It's like it's nuts. But I just if you cannot if they can't figure out a way to shut down Washington, Washington's going to the college football playoff like just straight up. And I don't know if this team is beatable. Like it is terrifying. It's LSU 2019 levels. This is Joe Burrow throwing to Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. That's the level of this. That's what this kind of feels like when watching. I watched a lot of that game, and that's the level of this in terms of like it is terrifying to watch them just absolutely shred good defenses and it just seems that every week they get better and let's like eventually they're going to play a good defense in Oregon. They are not going to play a good defense in USC. That game is going to be like 65-60. Someone wins, or like 63-60. Someone wins by like a field goal. But like, it's I'm excited to see that. I want to see that game. That game better be like in a good time slot. Sit back, popcorn, just points and yards, and that's going to be good.
Yeah, and the other side of them playing USC is that they miss UCLA, who is so far the best defense, which is a really nice break for them.
Mm-hmm.
The receiving side of this, kind of the same discussion by team. Washington is just nuts how far they are ahead of USC. Look at it like where these guys compare to like number 6, Washington State, whose offense is ridiculous. Aside from Massachusetts, no real surprises here. I don't know if Massachusetts, if it's a schedule thing, but it's just, they're kind of defying gravity. But it's working. No real surprises for me, aside from that in here.
Yeah, I agree with that. Colorado was interesting, but again, Shador Sanders has just kind of gone nuts against some bad defenses until they hit a wall against Oregon this last week. And I mean they're playing USC, which is definitely going to give them more yards this week. And I don't think they have that many other good defenses that they're going to be playing. So they will stack up more yards and points. But I think the knock on Shador Sanders, at least through this process and probably through the NFL draft process, is going to be like can you play against pressure? And the answer is going to be no. But that being said, though, we said the same thing about CJ Stroud. He's actually like in the last couple of weeks, he's actually come around alive and looked really good. They beat Jacksonville this week. They looked really good this last weekend. Houston did with CJ Stroud. So he maybe there's hope for. Well, I mean, there's definitely hope for CJ Stroud. Maybe there's hope for some of these guys who struggle under pressure in high school and in college. Maybe there's hope for them in the NFL.
Yeah, yeah, good point. GGAB, this is the top running offenses. Liberty is ahead of Air Force. That just is, again, that's just frightening. You shouldn't be ahead of anybody in this stat if you shouldn't be ahead of Air Force if in this stat. That just is frightening. And Nebraska is scarily close to Air Force as well. And Air Force is undefeated. Air Force is having a good season. It's not like this is, C or D grade Air Force. This is A grade Air Force. New Mexico State plucking along out there. Somehow Minnesota is here. I don't know what's going on in Minnesota. Louisiana is sneakily not as horrible as I had anticipated either. They, I don't know. They're a little better than I expected. In Central Florida, half of that is that Kent State game. Kent State just had the S&M non-conference schedule this year.
Mm-hmm. And New Mexico State, interestingly, up pretty high there too. I have them as a pretty highly ranked team too. They should have beat Hawaii. Like, okay, we got
Yeah.
the push on the 3, but like they should have crushed Hawaii. They let Hawaii back into that game. Bunch of stupid penalties late. My mom still thinks Hawaii is bad and Mexico State's pretty good. So we will, yeah. But that one was a frustrating loss too. But no, it's I think a lot of these make sense. Wisconsin is pretty good, but they've been playing a really tough schedule, so they haven't really been able to just pound someone with like a billion yards. But man, this Liberty team though, like this is scary. I think Liberty is just like with Chadwell now, it's a whole new level from where it was before with Hugh Freeze. And I think Auburn hasn't even been doing that amazing this year. Like they're very questionable on offense. Now, okay, it's going to take them a couple of years to rebuild, but like I think Liberty is a better team than Auburn, definitely right now. I think Liberty takes down Auburn if they played right now. So, like,
Yeah.
I honestly, I probably would have given Chadwell the Auburn job ahead of Hugh Freeze, but Hugh Freeze beat Nick Saban one or two
I was
times.
going to say,
So,
yeah, that's what's going on there. All right. The bum lists. Buffalo, no bueno. Southern missed to my point in part one. That was not a high scoring game with two good offenses. That was two horrible defenses. DeQuan Finn, like I said, he's not good. DJ Irons, please be better. I love you, man. I need you to do better. What else is here? EJ Warner. EJ Warner's had a tough schedule, though. I mean, he's played some really tough non-conference teams. Rutgers and Miami, two of the top 20 defenses. So I think once he gets into American play, that those numbers will go up a lot. Brendan Lewis is legitimately bad. Kelly McManus, we'll get into that next week. Cam Fancher, I highlighted that he stinks in the Sun Belt preview. So I think Marshall's kind of on borrowed time here.
mhm.
This is Ryan on the right here, just Team Ryan, the worst. Again, this is mostly because Sam Houston State plays like 8 quarterbacks. None of them can individually get on the radar for the bum list. So just to highlight how bad Sam Houston is. Northern Illinois, they're supposed to be so much better than this. I don't know what's going on with their offense. Brutal.
I like how I didn't know. Like the whole thing is, it's receiving yards above noob, which is what it's basically like more than what 1 yard a reception or
I think it's like 6 per reception.
yeah. So they have zero. So they
Oh no
are.
no no no! Sorry. This is kind of like where Louisiana Monroe. If you're the last, you're the standard. Sorry.
Okay. So you
Yeah.
assume that. Okay, well that's not great though. Um, Also
No.
Wyoming, a team with 18 Ryan, um, not only covered the spread but had chances to beat Texas, so that's concerning. Um,
Texas
yeah,
Tech. Or
no,
do they beat
Texas. They
Texas
they
Tech?
beat they beat Texas Tech. Remember
Oh,
remember
that's
that
right.
game was
Sorry, you're
tied
right.
10 going into the third quarter against Texas. The
Yeah. Jeez,
Longhorns.
that's a good point.
Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah. Air Force is interesting, but again, it's so shout out to Air Force actually. They have decided this year to not break my model. So what happened was I've told you the story. I'll say it for the podcast now. So in my model, what it does is it assigns target share to wide receivers, which is fine, right? So basically, if some guy gets a lot of deep targets in the model in the simulated games, he'll get more deep targets. If some guy catches behind the line of scrimmage, right, etc. Right? All well and good. Air Force, however, in the last year has decided that they're only going to throw the ball to like one guy to throw for deep throws. So what happened was because my model is designed as normal teams would be to have multiple options to throw to on a particular depth. Every time Air Force would run, it would break the model. So I had to basically create imaginary Air Force players that had zero target share at deep targets to make the model run. Now, again, it didn't matter because they had 0% target share, so which is just hilarious. But I had to basically create imaginary players to pretend throw to 0% of the time. Now, Air Force, thankfully, they're like, oh, sorry about that, Robert. We're gonna throw two deep passes to multiple deep receivers this year. So we're good. We fixed that for you. I'm like, thank you, Air Force. That's very good of you. Now also, you're covering a lot of spreads for me, so that's good too. You're very helpful to me this year. But yeah, thank you for fixing that in my model. That's very helpful too.
Yeah. You can just, instead of saying imaginary football players to make your model work, you can just call them Sam Houston receivers because I think that's functionally the same thing. All right. Defensive stats. Defensive apex. Liberty is a menace. That's the name of the podcast. Marshall, great, good for them. New defensive coordinator. I don't know. Their head coach is an offensive guy. Let's just see. Here's Georgia popping up, fourth in pass defense. Great for them. Ohio kind of, Ohio surprises me because that was the problem with their defense last season. was or with their team was defense was bad. Oregon 7, good for them. Northern surprises me. I don't think that'll last too long, although it is the MAC. Sustainable as long as they don't play Ohio, they're probably safe there. Penn State, not surprising. Iowa State's defense it was good last season, projected to be good this season. So only real surprises here are Ohio and Oregon, assuming that Northern Illinois is not going to be here for long.
Yeah, I agree with this. Interesting to not see Iowa, but they're probably close-ish onto the top of this list. They're probably just like 15th or something.
Yeah. And then defensive GGAB. This is the strength of your run defense. Here's UCLA number 2, no surprise, and the Venables. Year 2 of Venables working out again, as we say. Nebraska, I like their defense. I think Jacksonville State's I don't think they've really played a good offense as much as anything else. Although they're in the top 20 in the power ratings too. Old Dominion is really interesting. I don't know what's going on there. We'll talk about that a little bit. And there's your Iowa at number 10 in run defense.
There you go.
All right. Market intelligence. So these are the games that just kind of told me, something that we might not be catching. Louisville at North Carolina State, basically this is a pick 'em on a neutral field. Just telling me that, hey, we're there as far as Jeff Brom proof of concept. Now probably was announced with the win at Boston College, but this is kind of giving affirmation to that yep, this team's for real. NC State, not projected to win the conference, but definitely a for real ACC team. So that's what that tells me.
Yeah, I have Louisville as like massive favorites in this game. So now maybe too big of favorites if that makes sense, but like my model likes Louisville and my model also just kind of hates NC State, so I think it's a mix of both of those. But I like the money line here. At least it's only I think minus 150 or so. That's not that bad. And then put a little on the -3. Like there's a non-zero chance Louisville just blows them out, and we'll see. That's a Friday night game, so.
These two I've got grouped together here for different sides of the same concept I spoke about in week 1. We see it across FBS, but really pronounced in the Pac-12 is the first conference road game is just a real bear. And maybe just if you didn't hear it in part 1, go back and just, some good examples of that. And I've got 2 examples here. USC giving 23.5 at Colorado. Colorado just lost by 36. I think that this is, the market saying, okay, they got that awful effort out of their system and they're going to improve off of that now that they're at home. Washington giving only 17.5 at Arizona, when Washington's beating everybody by like 30, I think is kind of the other side of that saying, okay, first conference road game of the season. Probably going to just do stupid things like USC did last week with, 4 false starts and dumb fumbles and just stupid stuff. So I see those two just kind of coalescing around that same concept. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, I'm just trying to find the Washington game here. The big thing is that when you think about it, right, I mean, Washington destroyed Cal now at home. Arizona on the road beat Stanford by 1. You're like, this spread should be much bigger than last week's spread.
Yep.
But, this is the thing, I actually have this.
Oh, can I guess? Did Kalen DeBoer says he's going to start Musket instead of Michael Penix? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I only have this. I only have this Washington -10.
Wow.
So I think I believe I have this 45-35. So I have a pretty high scoring game here. But my model really likes Jaden Delora. It also really likes Michael Penix too. But I mean, I have Penix going for 400 yards. I have Delora going for 340, 350, 348. So like my model kind of really, my model thinks Arizona keeps this close. And this was also the one game last year. I think this was actually the spread of this game. No, the spread was shorter last year. This is actually a bigger spread than last year, which kind of makes sense. But Arizona has massively improved. Washington has even more massively improved, so it should be. But like the fact that it's 17, I think they're daring you to bet like I think they're like everybody's gonna bet on Washington. We'll give you something on Arizona, and I'm getting 7.5 from what my spread is. I think that's more than fair value. I'm gonna put stuff on Arizona here.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm not betting that one, but I totally see where you're coming from. This, I don't know if I'm just missing something. Central Michigan has been feisty. They gave Notre Dame a game for a half. They actually, I forget who they played last week. They gave another team a lot of problems. Apologize, I
South
can't remember who
Alabama.
it was. Yeah, no, they beat South Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, I'm wearing the T-shirt, obviously. Even I don't get this line. Eastern Michigan
Yeah,
stinks. They lost by 3 touchdowns to Jacksonville State.
yeah.
I Is there some quarterback issue I'm missing here? Is this just
I've
the
got.
market
I mean,
misreading?
I've only got Central Michigan. I've got Central Michigan -9, -10, so it's not that far off. Um, but maybe that's. I still got some value there on Central Michigan, so maybe I'll take some Central Michigan. But yeah, I don't hate that there. It seems a bit short, but I'm not. It's only 3. It's only off by like a score, so I'm not that concerned about it. So
Maybe this speaks ill of what Southern Alabama is this season. Then
I
maybe
think
that's a
kind of
takeaway.
yeah. They may be saying South Alabama's not that good, so
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Next one's just, I think this might be the same concept as the 2 Pac-12 games. Missouri giving only 11.5 at Vandy. Missouri's undefeated, and they've been a revelation. Brady Cook he has the same apex as Michael Penix. They played Kansas State, which is a much better defense than Washington's played at all. I'm not going to say that he's as good as Michael Penix, but the numbers are comparable between the two. And giving 11.5 at a Vandy team that I think stinks. I think, is there just a lot of first conference road game stupidity built into this one as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is that. It's a road game. I've got Missouri. Mine doesn't really adjust for road or not, so I've got Missouri -19.6, -20. Um, I think the people are still betting on Vanderbilt because they think Vanderbilt's good because they think Hawaii is good, but Hawaii is not good. I think Vanderbilt is also not good. Like Vanderbilt lost to UNLV. I mean, out of stupidity, but they still lost to them. And I think people are just like, oh, that's the anomaly. But Vanderbilt's actually good, but they're not actually good. I think this Missouri team's actually for real. So I'd be happy to take Missouri here.
Missouri versus Georgia is going to be interesting. Remember, Missouri had them
Close last
really,
year,
really
yeah.
on the ropes last season. Now it's at Georgia this season, but that's going to be one to watch. Man, I got to find when that game is. That's going to be the sneaky SEC Network game that I really want to watch. And if it's late in the season, it won't be sneaky. This last one is one of those. It's going to make my head hurt. SMU is giving 22.5 to Charlotte, who actually had who covered a slightly higher spread against Florida. These are both road games for Charlotte. Does that mean that SMU's about as good as Florida? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't get this line either. I've got SMU -13, 13.7, so 14 points. That's another whole 7 and actually another 8.5 points basically. So like I'd like Charlotte against that. I think a lot of people, it's weird, people kind of seem to have shrugged with the Florida versus Charlotte, but Charlotte's like a not bad team and Florida just did crush them, and I think they did good defensively against Florida. And I think people don't know what to make of that yet. So I kind of like Charlotte. I think Charlotte's just not. I think people are like, oh, Florida's bad. That's why they struggle against Charlotte. But I think actually it's just Charlotte's good.
Yeah, I don't know. Interesting. I guess we'll learn from this game. All right, deeper dives. Do you want to do yours first, or
How long is yours?
mine's pretty quick here?
Okay, you do yours first then.
Yeah. So before the 22 season, I didn't make this an official pick, but remember we both said Washington State might beat Wisconsin. I just said I kind of like Dickert against a weak quarterback. And so I've kind of seen this pattern repeat itself. So I just took, since he became the full time guy starting in 22, I just said, give me every win and loss and give me the opposing quarterback's apex for that season. So you can see basically the teams that Washington State has beaten have an average apex of 95. The teams that have beaten Washington State have an average apex of 123. Basically, there's this Utah one. I'm not sure what happened there. This is on the
I think
road.
Cam Rising was out.
It might be. They beat, he was there for that game. But I can just tell you, I remember this game specifically. So this is the best quarterback he's faced. That was at USC last season. Caleb Williams is horrible that game. Absolutely horrible. So even though he didn't win, he made him look bad. It's just interesting. I think you're going to see some similar breakdowns, between these two for a lot of teams. But for a team that's completely underappreciated, you need to have, my takeaway is, you need to have a really, really good quarterback to beat this guy's teams. Basically, if you're bringing a quarterback that's average, I don't like your chances. 123 is really good, and basically he's 9-2 against teams that have an apex of under 123. That's really something. He seems like a good guy too, but this guy is a really, really, really good coach, and he brings in a great offensive coordinator this season. I wouldn't count them out as Pac-12 champions. I'll just say that now. He knows how to get what he needs to out of his team that he can to get the very best effort.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right, I will go ahead and stop sharing here.
Okay. 1 second. Is it this button? Okay, here we go. All right. Let us. Okay, here we go. So this is a moment that has been kind of years in the making here. So basically, I have kind of always hated the AP and the coaches poll. I've always thought that they've been kind of unscientific, and I've always, people who listen to the podcast know that I've always complained about them for years. And this is kind of my attempt to kind of begin the process. I think there's going to be some more improvements, but this is the beginning of the process of making my own ranking system that we're going to be publishing each week. So this is, I'm titling this The Return of the BCS. So those who are unfamiliar, who did not watch college football longer than, I think, 5 or 6 years ago, the BCS stands for the Bowl Championship Series. And it's similar to what we have now, except that now we have the top 4 playing off in a playoff. But before that, it was number 1 and number 2 play at the end of the year. And what happened was it was the number 1 and number 2 as decided by a weighing of the averages of the AP and the coaches poll and a series of computer rankings. So many people called them the BCS computers. And people famously hated these computers. And I think a lot of people, from watching a lot more sports commentary, I think a lot of people just generally hate math. So that's kind of part of the reason they were biased against the computers for that. But I think a lot of people just didn't kind of understand how it worked. And to be fair, I think most of the computer rankings actually were proprietary. They didn't actually say how they worked. So there was a lot of kind of anger and confusion about that. So I'm going to explore the only public one, and we're basically we're kind of modeling this after, and we're going to talk about it. So this is what is known in linear algebra as, it's kind of dominance networks, dominant matrices, or basically second order dominance. So here's an example here with 5 teams. And for reference, I actually learned about this in my first year in university. And when I learned about this, the first thing I thought of was this is how the BCS works. So you see over here, this is basically a random assortment of 5 different teams, and they've all played against each other. Now, in this example, it can be 5 teams, 5 players, whatever. It doesn't really matter, but it just shows different results. So A beat D and E, B beat A, and you can see the lines here. So A beat the line going to D, the line going to E, and then A beat B, so the line going that way, but then B got beat by C, D, and E, right? So the thing is, the way you can actually represent this is you can actually put this data into a matrix here. for those who are familiar with linear algebra. So basically, A beat D and E. So A, they have a 1 here against D, and then they have a 1 here against E. But then there's nothing, there's zeros in the other columns, right? And it explains it down here. This means that A beat E, and this means that E beat C, right? So you see E, C, right? And it basically fills in kind of diagonally, right? So things up here are also mirrored down here as well. It's basically because A doesn't A play A, B, etc. So this line is all zeros, and then this is kind of a mirrored image of that in many ways. So now what you can do is you can actually rank according to this. This is kind of first order dominance. So what happens is you add up the numbers in each row, and the larger the score, the higher the rank. So basically A has 2 wins, B has 1 win, C has 3 wins, 2, 2, right? So you rank them, and then you get with the C as the best team, and then you have a 3-way tie for second, and then you have B as the 5th ranked team, right? It's 5th because there's 4 more teams ahead of it. So now this is okay, but not great, because you end up with a lot of ties this way, because basically they only played a handful of games, and actually I think in this case, in these examples, they play an unequal number of games. So you basically you only have these results here. There's no easy way to differentiate between A, D, and E because of that. So what happens is now you have second order dominance. So what happens is this actually involves squaring the matrices. So you see D squared. So what happens is matrix multiplication. We're not going to go too in depth on this. This isn't a linear algebra podcast. But what happens is you multiply across the row, across the column. So you do this number multiplied by this number, this number multiplied by this number, this number multiplied by this number, and then you basically do that all. You sum up everything together, and then you put it into here. Now, a lot of those will go to 0 in this case, so this is the sum of it. And basically what happens is the functionally what this does is I think I explained it in the next slide. So the first matrix is who you beat, right? You see the sums there. And the second order matrix is who your opponents beat. So basically what you're doing is you're counting how many wins your opponents had. And then you sum that up, and then you basically sum that up here, and then you get the final ranking. So now the final ranking has 1, actually it should be C, sorry, not D. Then it's A and E is 2, D is 4, and then B is 5, right? So now we know that A and E are tied for second, and then D is in 4th place, and then B is in last place as before. It was similar to before, but now we're able to differentiate that D, which had 2 wins before, D is worse than the other 2, right? Now this has some issues, right? Because one, there is only so much data in this, right? Not everybody played the same number of games. And actually, I think everybody played the same number of games, but there's only so many games you can play. Not everybody played everybody, and that creates problems, right? There's strength of schedule issues with all that stuff, etc., right? So, looking at the BCS system specifically, there is actually one of the computer rankings is actually called the Cooley matrix, and here it says, in his initial paper at Princeton University, Coley states the method is based on a very simple statistical principles and uses only Division 1A wins and losses as input. Margin of victory does not matter. The scheme adjusts effectively for strength of schedule in a way that is free of bias toward conference, tradition, or region. Coley claims this method is bias-free for estimating the ranking of a team given a particular schedule. The resulting values for each team are identified as a ranking, thus being a realization of Pierre Simon's Laplant's rule of succession. That sounds a little familiar, doesn't it, right? Wins and losses, right? In the matrix, we're only representing them as 1s and 0s. No bias, strength of schedule, perfect influence for that, right? No margin of victory included. Well, everything's just 1 and 0s. And we can get strength of schedule from that. Yeah, that sounds exactly like it. Now, the system is very similar to it. It's a slight, he tinkers, instead of putting just 1s and 0s, he puts slightly different things that deal a bit more strength of schedule. But it's functionally a very, very similar principle to second order dominance. So this is a very interesting example. So there's actually some controversy with this one. So all the BCS computer rankings, all of them were proprietary, and people don't actually know exactly how they worked, with the exception of the Cooley matrix. And there was actually a famous controversy with this. In the final BCS rankings for the 2010 season, LSU was incorrectly ranked ahead of Boise State at number 10 instead of number 11. The error was a result of Cooley failing to input an FCS playoff game, App State was D2 at this point, versus Western Illinois correctly, a mistake that affected an order that helped determine bowl pairings that season. So some people are probably wondering, well, how did that even happen? Why would an FCS game even impact number 10 versus number 11 in the final BCS rankings? Well, you look at LSU in 2010, they played Florida. Who did Florida play? Oh, that's right. They played App State. So when we talk about second order dominance, it's the wins of your opponent. They played App State. So that's how that affected it. There's your second order dominance. And as you can see here, things very start rapidly spinning out from one win here. Now it's all everybody who your opponent won to, that adds up to your totals as well. So that's kind of how this whole system spins out. And since created in 1992, the 4 instances where the cooling matrix is choosing different national champions from the BCS basically are the most. So basically, this system is very different than other systems. It has a habit of picking teams that the other systems don't pick, which I actually kind of like because I think sometimes they get it wrong. And basically, yeah, so it basically is pick different winners at the end of the season than other ones have. It's done that multiple times, so I kind of like that. So here are the problems with the BCS rankings, and that basically used to exist before. So with only limited data, you have huge swings from one game, as we saw before in that last example. We have the example with they incorrectly inputted an FCS playoff game, and that impacted number 10 versus number 11, which impacted basically the New Year's Eve Bowls game, the New Year's Bowls games. And then basically the problem with these systems is that it's limited. The limited data is a function of football, right? Teams only play physically once a week. I put tilde once a week because there's a bye week in there, whatever. But it's basically once a week. They don't play multiple games. Like they can't play 2 games a week or 3 games a week like you could basketball or hockey, right? And the season only has 12 games. There's 133 teams in FBS in college football, Division One, right? There's no way you could play a game once a week for an entire year and you wouldn't play everybody, right? But the interesting thing, though, is my model can simulate infinite-ish. I say ish because I could simulate infinite games, but it'd still be running. I wouldn't have results for it. But basically, my model can simulate as many games as I want it to simulate. So here's how we've done this now. So I basically, from my model data and in the model projections that we see week to week, what I do is I have every team play every other team in a best of 11. Now, it's actually, I only simulate the upper part of this matrix, and then the bottom part is filled in automatically, right? So, for example, you see Akron and Air Force 6-5, 6-5, right? It fills that in. It's a best of 11 to try to minimize variance. It could have done like 1, but 1 would be too random. Best of 3, best of 5. I chose best of 11 because it gives the other team enough chances. And then the end result here is that you see basically a matrix being filled in very similar to what we saw before with second order dominance. I square it, sum it up, and then we go on to the next part. So here is the first set of my computer rankings. So there's some surprises here. So one, as I've hinted before, USC is my number 1 team in the country. This is, again, after this most recent week of data, so that basically the model says I don't care about Arizona State. Tennessee is 2, that's high, but in kind of agreement with the BuckMetrics model there. Miami is 3, that's also very high, but their defense is very good. So that's kind of why they're high up there. Washington is at 4, so that is very interesting as well. We're pretty high on Washington, Oregon. Penn State, the highest Big Ten team, just slightly ahead of Michigan. Georgia there at 8. And then I draw a line here because you see it basically that's 1,000, basically less than 1,000 points. And then there's a steep drop off down into this range, the 9 to 16 range. That's where you have Oklahoma, Arizona, Texas, Duke, UCLA, Kentucky, Texas State. A little surprising there, but my model weirdly kind of likes them. I think they've just been kind of crushing plate teams, so that's why they're up there. Texas A&M is up there as well at 16, which makes sense because Miami crushed them. So when you're moving those teams up the rankings, it makes sense that Texas A&M would be lower than them. Nebraska 17th. Florida comes in at 23, just below Liberty at 22. You've got Notre Dame and Wisconsin up here. A lot of these rankings make a lot of sense. Even TCU here at 24, that makes sense. LSU at 27. Interestingly enough, though, with Clemson, though, so no Florida State in my top 30, which also you don't even have them in your top 20 offense or top 20 defense. So that's very interesting that neither of us have them there as well. The reason why my model isn't like it is because, again, we're only 4 weeks into the season. They've almost lost to Boston College. I think they were outgained on a per-play basis by Boston College, especially on the ground. They were definitely outgained by Clemson on a yards per play as well. So if my model thinks Clemson should have won that game, which it does, it has Clemson at 29. I think it has Florida State somewhere down in the 30s, right? So it makes sense that Clemson would be slightly ahead of Florida State. Tennessee outgained Florida, right? So basically on a per-play basis, Tennessee outgained Florida, so that's why it has Tennessee at 2. But it also thinks Florida's kind of good. It has them at 23, a top 25 team. Texas is not a top 5 team, which is very different than the AP and the coaches poll. It has them as middle of the pack here in the top 20, which makes a lot of sense because although they beat Alabama, Alabama is nowhere to be found here. They're in the 40s here. Utah is not even remotely close to a top 30 team. That's kind of a fact. They're probably one of the worst, probably one of, if not the worst, undefeated team. Duke 12, Arizona 10. Duke 12 makes a lot of sense. They look really good against Clemson, and they play Notre Dame this week. Will be a big test. Arizona 10 is fascinating as well. The model doesn't hate Arizona. It actually thinks they're pretty good. Miami third. We talked about that already. Liberty is very good. Nebraska's good too. And then again, Penn State, the best Big Ten team. Again, as I said before, I think Penn State can win the Big Ten. And I think they can beat Michigan, and I think they can beat Ohio State. Ohio State's not even here. Ohio State's not even in the top 30.
Yeah, they're like 32 or something.
Yeah. Now, I think it's because now I am using quarterback stats. I think McCord had a couple of bad games. So I think Ohio State might climb a bit. But again, they were kind of put away by Notre Dame. And Notre Dame's only 20th, right? My model's kind of lower in Notre Dame than I think some of the ranking systems, right? So and I think Notre Dame outgained them on a per play basis as well. Ohio State was very lucky to win that game, to be honest. And I think that just because a team got really lucky to win a game doesn't mean you should just keep them at number like whatever they are nationally, 5 or something. So yeah, I think so. That's that, and I think this is a really interesting system to do this. I think it's early, so you're seeing some stuff's being magnified, like the LSU weird game against BC. That's one of their 4 games, right? So that's obviously being basically multiplied in the modeling as well. Clemson again, almost beating FSU there. I think there's a couple of weird things like Tennessee as well, and maybe Miami being a little bit overvalued. But honestly, a lot of this ranking makes a lot of sense. And honestly, if you think about it and you think logically as to who teams have beat and how much they've beaten them by, I think in many ways, there's a lot of the ranking actually makes a lot more sense than the AP and the coaches poll. I think at least. Let's hear your thoughts on this as well. What are your thoughts on all this?
Methodology. One thought is this is an interesting point, and my first thought is how do I explain why Florida State isn't on there when I've said but your model you said is indifferent to venue, which is fine, but I would almost want to just kind of do an analysis to say, what is the typical hit that a team's performance takes specifically in its first conference road game? Because I'm telling you, like that stat I gave in part 1 about Pete Carroll, it's not a coincidence. It's just an amazing manifestation of it that he was literally, I think, 5-5 in those games. I think that would be an interesting adjustment factor just to, we can grab the data and just figure out what it is. And I bring that up because you've got, like I mentioned in part 1, you've got 5 teams that have yet to play their first conference road game. And a couple of them I said, yeah, these lines look a little short. It kind of looks to be that reason. That's what I'd kind of, we're seeing that kind of work its way through the system. Half the teams have taken their medicine, half haven't, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. That does make a lot of sense, yeah.
And now I'm just talking myself into being scared about what I have as my picks for this week based on that. The other thing, too, is just real quick. I want to look at, and I'm trying to use all 3 of my eyes that I have here, where we are so different. Actually, where do you have Oregon?
5.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So where we are just so different from the polls, UCLA, did they drop? Are they not ranked now?
Probably not, no.
Okay, that's a crime. Okay, UCLA, let's flag. The polls are off with there. You don't really have Ole Miss highly on here too, do you?
No, because my model thinks Alabama's horrible. So it's like, wow, that was really bad.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. Now, some of this will clean up over the season. There is, because some teams played FCS teams, there is some of last year's data in some of these. But basically, in a week or two, all that's gone, and then this is all just this year. And then again, as you mentioned, right, once all these teams have played a conference road game, then all of a sudden everybody's on equal footing, right? Then all of a sudden that Florida State lost to the Florida State near lost to Boston College doesn't look so bad, right? And then all of a sudden everything looks fine, right? So I think it's a very. I think this is. I think this is a very good. I think some of the stuff looks a little weird, but I think it's because this model, like when you look at other rankings, it's a ranking of what has happened, but this model is unique in the fact that it's saying what will happen in the future, and it's saying, okay, this is going to happen in the future. Like if these two teams were to play, this is how the model thinks they would react, and then it ranks based off of what it thinks will happen rather than what has actually happened. And I think that is in many it's different than the AP and the coaches poll. In some ways that's better, and in some ways that's worse. And I think I lean to the better. I think it depends on what you're looking for, but I think for future production, I think it's better.
Yeah, you kind of capture too what I talked about. The shortcoming of mine is that I have the teams with good QB play have good luck versus they outperform, and that's why I think that's probably the biggest difference, that you have USC number one and I have them like in the 40s. Um, to that extent, I find it interesting that your top G5 team is Texas State, but they have awesome quarterback play, and I think that's a big function of that. And they actually had great quarterback play against a Power 5 team that probably a lot of teams below them don't have in that same venue. I don't. Yeah, you don't. You don't have Syracuse. I'm just kind of eyeballing here. You don't really have Purdue, Washington. Okay, Washington State 30, Michigan. So Texas State we talked about. You don't have Coastal Carolina. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate
I
that.
have them as one of the worst teams.
Great.
They're like they're out over 100. They're like in the, I think like the
Yeah,
110s, 120s.
and that's a great example of why it's better to have both our models, because they actually, my model has them as a pick, and I'm not going to take that.
Mm-hmm.
Just also worth noting, Tennessee is ranked 19th to 21st in the polls, and you have them second. I have them ninth, so probably some value to have for them. And I don't even know if Liberty is even on anybody's. I don't know if they got any votes. I'm just kind of looking here real quick. They got one vote in the coaches poll, and you have Liberty 22nd. I have them 13th.
Mm-hmm.
Liberty is a menace.
Yes they are. Okay, back to you can go
That's
back
awesome.
to yeah no and I think there's some adjustments that need to be made. I this will kind of stop being as jittery once everybody's played that first conference road game. And then I think maybe some more adjustments. I think the thing is, we're talking about this, right? And I explained how the old BCS system used to work. No real reason why I can't recreate that as well, put that ranking out there as well, and maybe even merge those together. Maybe that would clean up a bit of some of the stuff with why Florida State's so low and get them a bit higher, and at least into the 20s, maybe even to the teens.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, interesting that, quarterback play versus venue. I think that's a big difference between our
Mm-hmm.
two. All right. Can I interest you in any plays this week?
Let's see. What have we got? What would you give me for? Let me call up DraftKings here. What would you give me for North Carolina and or Miami to win the ACC?
North Carolina, I will give you 750 on North Carolina. And I will give you Miami's for real. I'm not going to give more than 250 on them.
Okay. It says ACC championship game. I'm assuming that means to win the ACC. So they have Miami, Florida as plus 750, and they've got North Carolina. What were you going to give me North Carolina at?
750.
They have 850. I thought, does my other book have Miami much lower? Is there just like an amazing arbitrage opportunity here? One second.
Don't tell me that this is going to end up with like giving business to DraftKings. This will
No, it'd be
backfire
giving
hugely.
business to. Yeah, no. Bet365 has North Carolina 10-1 to win the ACC. There's some value there. Duke at 752. Duke 850 on DraftKings. There's probably some value to be had here, but they've got Florida State minus 160, Bet365 minus 170, Clemson 25-1. Yeah, that sounds about right.
God, those are all like legit teams. Just Clemson's there's no path for Clemson.
No,
Not to
they're
make
they're
this the
they're
Clemson
eliminated
segment,
now.
but yeah,
They're
they have
eliminated.
to be. There's just
Um,
yeah. I'm not beating any prices that you've got.
I don't think so. No. What would you, yeah? Let's use that a four hunt 4-1 to win the SEC. Uh, Penn State 3-1. I've got that at 4. Florida State. Do we have to make the playoffs? What's Florida State to make the playoffs now? Florida State minus 150. No plus 120. The no was actually kind of tempting there. Um. Ooh. Okay. Penn State to make the playoffs. DraftKings has a line there. What would you give me Penn State to make the playoff?
You're gonna go beyond your Big Ten champs.
Yeah. Well, I think those are kind of similar
Yeah.
ish.
Penn State to make the playoff. Yeah, no, that. I can't give you. I can't give you more than plus. God, 380.
Okay, DraftKings got 270, so I'll put another 50 on that.
And that's to make the college football playoff. Okay.
What about? Ooh, I don't hate this. Okay, I want to know what your honest line is on this, and I'll North Carolina to make the playoff.
Jeez. 45-1.
45-1 in North Carolina.
Yeah.
They've got 15-1.
Oh my God. Yeah. Give me all that.
See, it's rough.
Free money. Come
But
on. You're gonna pass up free money here?
I'm thinking about it. 20.
20
Change the bet
points?
size. We'll do 20. $20, a floater.
Oh, you didn't. Yeah, you didn't give me a. You didn't give me a bet size on the.
Oh, 50.
Okay.
I think all my bets have basically been 50. Penn
And that
State
was
plus 350 to make the playoff on Bet365.
okay. And that was to make the playoff, right?
Yeah, that's to make
For
North
UNC.
Carolina make the playoff, and then Penn State to make the playoff. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I think that's it. Close down the
Okay.
book. That's enough. That's enough gambling for this week.
All right. Our plays last week much better.
Yes.
Yeah. Now I just want to point out one thing here. These joint plays were basically when I had my brain and your model, and so these are going to be kind of retired unless you and I just separately agree. But really, the dual model plays, these are the ones that I think went just under 59% last season. Now that my model's functional, we have a separate
Mm-hmm.
column for them. A lot of games to look at this week. We've talked about some of these quite a bit already. Jacksonville State at Sam Houston. We both have the market way off. So our guy we talked about in part one is probably going to maybe take another shot at that. But I like that. That's a dual model play.
I have some breaking book news here. Sam
Yes.
Houston State under 13 points on Bet365
Yes.
plus 125.
Oh my God! You have to. You have to.
I mean, is it
You have
exact?
to.
So the problem is it's a three-way market, though. Oh, what's the team points? Oh, it's team point bands. I just want team total or whatever. Under 13, you have to play something on that. Like, now it's if they get like a touchdown and 2 field goals, but like, I don't think so. Like, they've scored 1 touchdown and 1 field goal so far.
Yes, in 3 games.
It's not
They are
like
improving.
why do they think they're getting better? They're not getting
I
they're
no.
like I don't think Houston cared. They're just like, okay, sure, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Oh, that was a touchdown? Okay. Congratulations.
Yeah.
So we both like these. We both have to take these. Both parts of that Sam Houston game. Texas A&M versus Arkansas. Yeah, we both like the Aggies, which I know you are going to be delighted to hear. Um, I guess Connor. I can't get a line on this because Connor Wegman got hurt. I don't consider that to be
Mm.
significant injury news. I think that with Petrino there, the quarterback play will be fine. I'm definitely going to play this. Or you have the same mind?
Yeah, I agree.
Clemson at Syracuse. You basically have the market correct. My model really likes Syracuse. You know, I'll probably make a small play just because it's the wrong team favored by my model. But the fact that your model has it going a different way is going to just keep me playing just probably like about a tenth of a unit on this one. I don't imagine you're going to play this with your model being so close to the market here.
Yeah, I will. I'm not touching that one. No, I don't think there's not enough value there. I don't think.
Yeah.
Um,
This next one is interesting, seeing as we've like kind of badmouthed the favorite here throughout part one and part two, and I'm taking my model with a grain of salt that Nebraska should be favored, but we both have more than a touchdown of variance here. So if I've already grabbed this, I grabbed this as soon as my book dropped it, and then as soon as I got your numbers, I dropped it for another half unit just because you know, as soon as I got confirmation. Are you taking a note to yourself to to maybe do some on that too as we
yeah,
speak, or did you already grab
I
this?
So I think my look ahead on this one was Michigan favored. I think I grabbed it, but then I pulled out my line, and then my line was a lot closer. So luckily enough I was able to cash out the bet, so that was very good. And I'm just waiting on this because I think there's now the thing is normally in a game like this where I see significant value from the spread, I throw a little on Nebraska money line, but I'm not going to because somehow Nebraska will find a hilarious way to lose this game. So I'm just going to bet the spread and be happy. But yeah, the thing is, it's fascinating because last week the spread against Michigan spread against Rutgers was 24 and a half, depending on when you bet it. Um, they came. The only reason they even got close to covering that was because of a pick six. If it wasn't for that pick six, they would have won that game by 17 instead of so the Rutgers would easily cover that spread. So yeah, Michigan is struggling a little bit, and that's even with Harbaugh back. So I'd be a little concerned if I was Michigan.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. This is their first road game of the season too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which, not to repeat, but yeah, it's not nothing. Yeah, I was surprised on this next one, Purdue. I had a big margin here, and you're just showing. I don't know if you consider a field goal to be significant of a
Yeah,
play.
it's a small. I think that's a money. That's a money line play for me. I don't love the minus 1.5, but I think a Purdue money line play is fine.
That's not a bad idea. Okay. Yeah, boy, our models are really different here. I don't know what this is about. I've got Texas Tech by
Yeah,
almost 3 touchdowns ahead of Houston, and you've got actually Houston like winning by 5 here. And we both have like big margins from the market. Makes me just think, I don't know. I gotta pass then if you're just that far off from in the opposite direction of my play, right?
hmm yeah, that is concerning. I kind of do like Houston though. I think Tyler Shuck is injured out with injury for the season or something or multiple weeks. I
He's
think I
out
saw
for
he's out for the season, but I
six
don't think
six
he
to 8 weeks.
played last week though. But I can't get behind this Texas Tech team. I don't think Houston's bad. I think this is kind of a rivalry. This is within Texas rivalry. I think Texas Tech is Lubbock. No, so it's not that
Yeah.
close, but it's other side of Texas. But it's still a Texas rivalry. I'll take the points in a Texas rivalry.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just gonna pass on this. I don't feel that strongly. Georgia at Auburn. I don't know how comfortable are you with Georgia and on Auburn getting to 60 on this?
I don't know. The thing is, my model sometimes just basically kind of pushes teams into scoring. So it's like not really a like it's just the thing is if you simulate because you're simulating basically a game and eventually like in real life the teams would be more aggressive. Like I think in my games they're less aggressive. They'll much more likely take a field. Like if they're down multiple scores, they'll just kick a field goal. They don't care, right? But in college football, they're like, okay, we're down 21. We're not going to kick a field goal, right? But I think they're much more likely to kick a field goal. So I think my model just has generally a little bit higher scoring, especially in games that are kind of more blowouts. So I don't know. I like Georgia against the spread here, but I'm not taking the over under though. The over under might not be bad, but I don't love it. I think the 47 is just a little too tight in case Auburn scores.
I'm actually going to make that. I'm going to play that. I'm going to make that one of my official plays here. Not a model play. It's not a dual model play, but it's going to be one of my plays. It's one of the things that my model crushes is when I went over the defenses and I said if your defense is over 9, consider for plays here. And so I've got Georgia qualifies, especially it's especially strong when it's the visiting defense for whatever reason. And there's a margin of 13, which is extremely significant. And kind of to the point that we talked about when we were talking about Georgia, we'll see about Carson Beck. This is also their first road game of the season. They've had, I think, all home games so far as well for Georgia. Yeah, this total, we're on different sides too. Kansas, Texas. This is interesting because I think the first inkling is, yeah, it should go over, and your model is right. In part one, I hit on how Kansas's defense is improving quite a bit, and I have Texas's defense very highly rated. Now, the thing is, when I'm projecting, I'm indifferent to pace of play, and I don't know. Do you have pace of play in yours or not?
No, I don't really have it. That's kind of one of the last missing pieces for the model, and for that I need college play-by-play data, and I don't have that yet. And that's one of the changes. I had to make other implementations this off season, but that's high on the list of next season implementations.
Yeah, I'll probably just pass on this, even though this is yeah. I'm okay. I did play it. I'll make it an actual podcast play too. So I write myself down here for Kansas, Texas under.
Okay. What do you have this spread at? Because I like it was so funny because I was watching the Hawaii. So I think I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but for those of you who have FanDuel accounts, randomly at basically late Saturday night to early Sunday morning, they basically make up their own lines and they post them. And those are not the circle lines, which once the circle lines comes out, that's when all the other books set their lines. So if
Mm-hmm.
you sit there with what you think a line should be and their line is different, you can just hammer them. And I literally saw a Texas Kansas line open at Texas minus 20 and a half. And by the time I got around to betting it, it was down to 20. Now I still hammered it, but that's now 17 and a half. So,
Mm-hmm.
and the money line, like I've got like plus 660, 670, 680, something around there money line. Like, my God, like I like Kansas can win this game. Kansas can win this game. The only reason Kansas got destroyed last year was because Bijan Robinson ran for like I think 150 yards against them. There's no Bijan Robinson here. Their backup isn't even here. Like now, it's other players who are also pretty good at running the ball. But they're not Bijan Robinson. So, and Kansas is better on defense. They actually have a defense this year, and they've improved on offense. And they're going to be out for revenge from last year. So keep an eye out for that. Also, I will at some point this week, I will be when I'm sitting here during my day on lunch. I will definitely, or one day this week, I will definitely be rewatching Kansas Texas 2021 someday this week just to get myself ready for this game. So 3:30 Eastern, I think it's gonna be on ABC. One, rewatch that game, and then also this game is gonna be great this year. So
To answer your question, I actually have this right at market. I have Texas by 17 and a half.
okay,
So no confirmation from my model there.
I think I have
Um,
Kansas. I have Texas minus 7, so I have this significantly closer.
this next one, it's just as interesting to me because I had such a variance from the market, and I'm looking here is my model just thinks Ball State's offense is just horrible, and I don't know why they wouldn't be. I think they've really struggled to score against everybody except for Indiana State. I don't know how this is close, although Western Michigan didn't really cover this themselves in glory at Fresno, but Fresno's at least a real team. Man, but I really wanted to bet this, but you have this right on. And if I'm off by 17, sometimes it's like I'm missing something.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, if it's over 14, that's about the maximum. So I'm gonna reluctantly not play this one. This next one, going to the difference in our models and how short lived I think the Coastal Carolina offensive rating is going to be. I actually have them winning by 11.5 at Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern, like I dreaded in the Sun Belt preview, is actually pretty
Yes.
good this season. You've got them by 17. I think that's fair. Are you going to play this one? You think?
I think I already have. If not, I definitely plan on it. Um, I my only concern is that I am not the biggest fan of betting on Clay Helton. Um,
Yep.
but that is a little terrifying. But I can't get enough of fading this Coastal Carolina team. Like
Yeah.
legitimately, I like it's working again and again. And the thing is, when you have a team like Coastal, even like there's a lot of examples of this when there's like a team, and we had this for San Jose State a couple of years ago when they won the Mountain West, and I think you even have that for Ohio and Toledo. Like when you have a non-Power Five team that's that's good one year, then that's kind of baked into their spread for the whole next year. And the reason for that is because a lot of people don't know every single college football team, or they're not completely up with every single college football team. So they remember that team from last year, like, oh, that team will cover the spread, and they don't, right? And this is the problem. People will just lay money on what they remember from last year, and I think that's that's I think the problem. And I think we can basically like that's why I think we're basically slowly week after week beating down that we're basically just degrading that shine of the Chadwell shine from Coastal for years, and it's slowly fading. And like last week they were 7 point favorites. Now they're basically a 7 point dog, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And I like Georgia Southern here.
Yeah. Agree. I think Boise is another good example of that. A G5 team that just, it's like there's excessive brand equity. That's just is carrying over. I think they've covered once this year. Notre Dame at Duke. We've been talking about this for. I brought this up in the ACC preview. I had this at 7. I had the preseason line at Notre Dame giving 7, and now we both have Duke winning straight out, which is no real surprise considering how high both of our models are. I'm gonna play this money line too as soon as that drops. I should actually check if that has dropped yet.
Yeah,
Um,
this
you
is
on this one
again
too?
this is again another perfect example of like we said that line, and when we even said that line, we're like, that's what the line is going to be, and we'll bet Duke in that game. This is a perfect example of people love betting on Notre Dame. This is again. This is the guy who said, "Oh, if your line's X away from market, your model's bad." It's like, well, no, because there's so much baked into this line. Notre Dame is one of the most public teams. Period. Like just straight up, next to Ohio State, Michigan, Texas, they're one of the most public teams. If this was anything near even, 90% of the money would be on Notre Dame. If this was a pick, Notre Dame plus 120, everything would be on Notre Dame. You literally cannot have Notre Dame be a dog here, or even close to a dog. You can't even have them under
Yeah,
a field goal, because if you have them under a field goal, everybody would be on Notre Dame. So you have to balance it out. You have to give extra points to Duke, and I even think like that. I think they want the 7.5, but they're just like we can't put the 7.5 here because Duke has been actually pretty good.
it is.
I think they have to
Yeah,
give like if because I think they honestly, if you ask the books, they probably want to give you 7.5, but they think they realize that enough sharps would be on Duke that it would put too much of a dent in it. So you have to make the sharps think about it. But I think I think it's this is like I really like Duke here 5.5 like a field goal. This is going to be an amazing game. I'm excited for this game. This Duke team is just good. Like and Garrett what's it Garrett Riley? What's his name? The quarterback's name?
Oh, Riley Leonard.
Riley Leonard. Yeah, sorry. He's not like he's good, but he's not like this isn't. he's so under the radar because he's not like throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. He'll throw for like 250 with like 1 touchdown, but then he runs the ball well too. He'll have like a rushing touchdown in there too. He's a really good threat. This team is just a good cohesive team. It's good on defense and good on offense. It's a perfect mixture of stuff. And again, this is why I'm starting to sweat those. I'm starting to sweat those Florida State bets because it's like you've got Miami, you've got North Carolina, you've got Duke. If Florida State trips up in any way, all that's gone, right? So that's why I'm starting to worry a little bit about some of those bets.
Yeah, fair. Another ACC game. This, I'm just glad that your model confirmed this because I've been very skittish about betting on Virginia Tech. Now it is Pitt, who is just abysmal. But man, Virginia Tech doesn't seem much better. But wrong team favored here. So I can't get a line on this. I don't know if is maybe Dracovic hurt or maybe the horrible Virginia Tech quarterback. That can't even like move the line though. Both these quarterbacks stink. Why can't I get a line on this?
Which
Virginia Tech Pitt.
I grabbed this Sunday, Sunday with 3.
Yeah, okay. So you grabbed Virginia Tech.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So dual model play. These last two, I've also noted over here. We have the wrong team favored, so they're both money line plays as well. Let me see.
Yeah.
Yes, they are. Yeah. As long as here's a little magic here. As long as the dog is, from my historical findings, as long as your dog is 4 points better, then it's going to be long-term profitable money line play. If it's just a field goal, different kind of expectation. I'll just say that. I'm really confused and concerned about this next one. Now, I've been bad-mouthing Marshall, just saying borrowed time, Cinderella, clock's about to strike midnight here or whatever. We both have this same thing. We have
that's freaky.
Old Dominion by 2. Now, the one thing is that our models both exclude FBS, FCS games. I don't know if you caught what Old Dominion did last week. They beat Texas A&M. They beat Texas A&M Commerce 10-9, which is really not comforting. But we didn't pick that up. Neither of us did.
No, that's true.
But now the other thing too, why maybe I shouldn't play this, is it's over 14-point variance, and that's kind of when I'm missing something. So I played this for a half a unit. And
I'll
technically
think about it.
Yeah, actually, no, this is not a dual model play. So even though that's in bold, don't consider that a dual model play because it's it's over 14-point variance. So if you're listening and not just looking at graphics and taking notes, that's not a dual model play. Just note that the models agree, but the variance is too big. We're missing something that's in the market, which is that horrible game that Old Dominion just had. And this last one, this is truly the week 5, does the airplane really fly play. Not only do we both like Mississippi State here, we both actually have Mississippi State winning? Question mark?
Yeah, the problem is, I think with Bama, because the thing is, I'm just trying to find my projection.
Are you going to mention some Jalen Milroe weird thing again?
Well, no. The thing is, there is that game with Buckner and Ty Simpson, right?
Yeah.
That's in there. We don't exclude that game, right? So we're like, oh man, they're really bad, but like maybe they're a bit better. Like it's starting to correct, but it's not there yet. The thing, actually, no, I have Bama as 3 point. I'm showing Bama at minus.
Oh, sorry.
So
Yeah.
We both have Bama as favorites.
Yeah.
Yeah, we both have Bama as slight favorites. I've seen Mississippi State. I'm struggling with taking them here. Like the 15 is tempting. Maybe something on the spread. I can't stomach a money line play here. I can't. But
I played it. It literally, once I got your model, I just I grabbed it. I grabbed
spread and money line.
The 15.
Spread and money line.
Not the money line. No.
Okay.
Yeah,
What is the money line? 4-1, 5-1.
I don't get prices when it's that much. My guy stops it like when it's 10-1
1 second.
or 10 point
It's
spread.
weirdly late. 450. I got 14.5, 450. That's a little tempting, actually. That's kind of tempting. I'll think about. Let's see how good of a day. If I crush everything in the early part of the day, then yeah, okay, there'll be a Bama, there'll be a Mississippi State money line play there.
Okay, so to recap, our dual model plays, which is kind of the real featured performer here. Jacksonville State giving, I think that's up to 6.5, but that's still a play. Sam
Yeah.
Houston team total under. Aggies giving to Arkansas, Nebraska, Duke against the spread and money line, Virginia Tech against the spread and money line, and Mississippi State against Bama. Note that Marshall versus ODU is not a dual model play because the margin's too big. My mistake on the formatting. Preseason upsets. My Ole Miss Alabama did not come true. Apologies to all who followed me, but it was a good preseason call nonetheless. And I believe that is it. Anything more on your end?
I will say.
So let me just recap. So aside from the dual model plays, I have as my plays, that'll go into the Bucks plays column. I have Georgia Auburn under, South Carolina Tennessee under, and Kansas Texas under. I just caught you for Purdue money line. Do you have any other plays aside from the dual model?
I did Purdue money line. Okay. Give me Louisville spread and or money line. It's -3. I don't hate that. It's sad there was value. I liked Middle Tennessee when it was 8.5, but 5.5 I like it a little bit less. There's some lines that I liked early and they're kind of gone now, which is a little sad. But like Temple, I grabbed Temple at like 5.5. It's down to 3. That's not bad. We have things. Oh, give me Air Force -10.
Okay.
And then, well, 1 second. And then Air Force -10. And then I think TCU. Yeah, TCU against Virginia. Give me TCU -12.
Tony Elliott seems bound and determined to make that happen. Idiot.
Oh no, it's against West Virginia.
Oh, okay.
Not Virginia.
He said Virginia.
Oh,
okay.
Wrong Virginia. Wrong of the four.
Yeah.
3 or 4 Virginias.
Oh yeah, no, yeah.
And then
they're at Boston
you know
College.
what? Actually,
No.
yeah. Give me Arizona +18. Give me Arizona, and then maybe a little on that spread against Washington. Let's have them play an actual team this time.
Okay. Fair. Yeah, your model likes them. Okay. Cool. Well,
Yeah.
everybody, thank you for watching. Good luck in week 5. Hopefully you got enough to think about here, maybe a few plays here and there. And good luck, and we will see you all a week from now.
Yeah.
Thanks all.
See ya.